Welcome to The Lost Signals Discusses Film and TV. Using the revolutionary Manzur-Ramosi Thurlow scale,
or MOTS,
we scrupulously review these art forms with an emphasis on narrative structure. Join us for another entertaining episode.
Hello there. Welcome back to Lost Signals Discusses Film and Television. And today we are doing another, or at least an A24 film, which we haven't done in a while, at least a new one. It is called First Cow. I am your first farmer, Scott Thurlow, here with my fellow ruffians, Stephen Amosi.
And I'm the cow.
And Jonathan Ian Manzer.
I'm the last cow.
Indeed you are. And so I shall give a log line. What I've come up with is we've got to move these oil cakes. We've got to bake these clafouches. So that's, I don't know if you haven't, if you've seen this film, maybe it makes sense, maybe not. But with that, Steve, why don't you tell us about what actually happens in the film?
Sure. The main character, Cookie, who is, I guess, a chef, starts off with this ragtag group of people going out west, meets randomly someone who becomes his best friend later, King Lou, I believe is the name of the character.
And to be clear, they're basically on the Oregon Trail, like the 1820s, 18.
Yeah.
Around there.
And he just shows him a little kindness. And then at some point they both lose all their companions and things that have been dragging them down and also holding them up. And they both kind of are just alone. They meet again in a bar. They have friendship, and then they decide to start striking out on their own, baking small cakes.
Still milk, bake cakes. Yeah.
As always happens when you bake cakes, things go horribly wrong, and they're hunted down. Their lives are in very much danger at the very end of this movie, and it's left a little bit open-ended.
Well, they find their bones at the very beginning, so they died next to each other.
Yeah,
that's true.
The opening shot is modern day, like a woman finds their buried bones.
But how they die is open to interpretation.
Yeah.
I like to think that the cow escaped the pen and trampled it. But
it's up to you.
That is true. Aaliyah Shawkat, as Woman with Dog, finds the bones at the very beginning, and it's such a blink and you'll miss it scene, but she is in this, and I do really love her in a lot of stuff she's been in. I think she picks interesting movies to be in, and I'm glad that she was in this one. So there it is. That's basically the whole story. Now you know.
Right. Basically what happens, it's the titular first cow was the only cow in territory, and they basically Ocean's 11 themselves, like you said, to steal the milk to bake the cakes. So given all that, that's what happens. Score wise, I guess I'm going with it too. It was fine. Here's the thing, I didn't hate this film, but nor was I was super engaged with it. There were certainly better, especially A24 films, and I understand that's sort of a narrower niche. And the bar is pretty high on that. But I was more enthused about watching it, going into it, coming out of it. It's okay. So I'm looking at it okay too. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think I'm looking at it pretty strong too. I went in this movie expecting a great A24 movie, and I think this actually at the bones of it is a really, really good movie. The problem is it's not exactly my type of movie, and it's very slow and just
it's the slowest of all slow burns for sure.
Very ponderous over kind of what is happening. It's a movie that lives just almost solely in the moment, and I think that it's really well done. I think that it's really well shot and well imagined, but in terms of the plot and also in terms of the plot, I think it's a well done plot, but it's just a very small slice of a couple of lives. It's not a lot happens. There's one turning point in these people's lives, and you don't even like precisely see how it turns out. Like you kind of get the idea of what it is, but like you don't exactly see the whole story. And I think that's kind of the idea, which I'm not against, but it's not enough for me to give it a 3. I think I am pretty strongly in the camp of a 2 though.
So the central premise of this, people stealing milk from a rich guy.
Right.
And that's the stakes there, getting caught. And somehow they make a ridiculous premise. I was invested enough in the characters to care what happened to them towards the end of the film. However, they spend a lot of time building like the rising action in this is so slow that yes, it built up stakes for an absurd twist. Not that it's meant to be absurd, it's but like the premise on it just is kind of an absurd thing. That it dangers you from there's a danger between making me care about these people and making me bored of these people that I don't care about them. And I think this almost fell into me being deathly bored at parts of this. But I think for overall it did hold me on. So I'm going to give it a 2. But there are people who are going to fall into that camp with, I don't like anyone in here because this is so inconsequential.
I feel you.
So,
I see what you mean.
But I would say I like the idea behind this film more than I do the execution of it.
Yeah, I think that's well said. So, like, 2s for plot, I think it's about fair. And with that, once you go on to themes,
So this is interesting. I have to say that anyone who likes this film and is please go read the National Review review of this.
Oh my god!
Because it is one of the funniest things I've ever read. And obviously, the person who wrote it was intelligent, but they're just apoplectic with rage at this work. I like it because I love the deconstruction of the Western tropes, and this is. I wouldn't say it's a direct response to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but oftentimes I've seen like quotes of her saying that kind of the typical masculine man is and the John Wayne types that infuse the Western thing. This is an anti-Western and an anti-traditional masculine work. The main characters are one of them is kind of a major motherly or has the traditional kind of roles of being a cook, being very caring with kids, and the Asian actor who has been in a number of things. He was in Rise of Skywalker.
He's in Last Jedi as well.
Orion Lee.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
But both of these characters aren't, in a sense, the traditional Western heroes, and nor is this the traditional Western plot. And it's kind of almost they're inserting a inconsequential heist film to mock a Western thing. And yeah, occasionally you got to take the piss out of cultural stances. Not that because this isn't satire, but it's more of a different lens to view this world on.
Yeah, exactly.
And an attempt, I feel, a very good job of realistically depicting what an 1820s era was like and the types of figures that were in there. So overall, I think that I think I can guess I don't like ascribing intent, but I think I can guess from interviews I've read behind the woman who did the screenplay and directed this, that she was successful in what she wanted to do with it, which was to give
Kelly Reichardt, by the way, is the director and writer's name.
You're the name guy. I don't remember. But I think she pulled off exactly what she wanted to do, which was to give a different type of Western.
Yeah, I would agree. What do you think, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that as well. I think that, there's always themes of kind of the, understanding the emotional side of going out west, like going into something that's the unknown, right? Like, whereas a lot of what you've seen before is the manly man side of that, like the super masculine side of it. This is kind of the like, look, people have feelings, like people have emotions and things, and like I want to delve into that, and I think that it does a really good job with that, and not only that, but like, you know, there were when you go out west and it's a lot of like I feel like, you know, at the time it was a lot of men that went out there, right? Like there are people that are gonna fulfill certain roles in terms of this society, and like they always will. And I love that it's showing, oh, here's a guy who loves baking, here's a guy who loves cooking, here's a guy who, you know, is and in terms of the King Lu character played by Orion Lee, it's like here's a guy who is just looking for the next horizon, right? Like he's looking for the next big thing, he's looking for something new. And they really displayed what these people wanted in a really good way. I actually really love the themes of this movie. Perhaps as my favorite part of the movie, I think that it really dug into like who these people were and why they were out there, whether it was their choice in the case of King Lu, or whether it was like by necessity in the case of Cookie, right? Like he kind of was like, I just had to keep moving in order to stay alive.
Yeah, no.
And I think that there's a lot to dig into in terms of that. So I'm gonna give it a strong one.
Yeah, so like, I mean, I'm gonna give it a 1-2. I don't feel maybe as strongly, but I think certainly the themes were well presented and well executed. What I liked is that there's a sort of a subtle thing. Like I thought about it as I reflected upon it, where in the opening, like 20 minutes, when Cookie's in his the group that's moving west, like going up the trail, so one of his other fellow camp members says something to him like, you know, you're the cook. It's on you to figure out like how to do what you can, find what you can to feed us. And of course, that's what he does by, i.e., like stealing the milk, if you will, like from the first cow in the territory from the guy. So like, yeah, I mean, you're right. Like, yes, it's certainly, you can see the commentary on like sort of an answer, like a mirror, if you will, to the traditional like John Wayne Western stuff. Like certainly that's there. But like even so, like it's just also a character exploration. So I think it works well on really all those fronts, and I'm going to give it a solid one for that.
You know what this movie actually reminds me of, surprisingly? Unforgiven. Because that was a Clint Eastwood response to the logical outcome of what
of every Western hero.
masculinity would work as. While this is a similar serious fashion, but looking at a different aspect of the West.
Yeah,
and I think that people who like Unforgiven would hate this film, but I think that this as valid of a message of different interpretations of the West.
Yeah. But yeah, I mostly agree. So we all agree pretty much one's on theme. So I'll move along to Antagonists, which is not an iffy one per se, but like, yeah, of course, on the surface, it's like you said, Steve-O, doing what you need to do to survive. And like when you're not like, you know, the master like alpha trapper or something like that, if you will, like hunter, etc., right? But like it's America, you know, it's that time, and they're exploring West. The gold rush is on. They mentioned that here and there in the film. You know, they're at the fort, like the British Royal Company, whatever it may be, is like, you know, in charge of that as well. So like it's just, I think like trying to make ends meet with whatever talents and skills you have in this specific historical setting and period. And I think maybe not, while not maybe the strongest aspect of this film, of the story, I do think the characters, like they were struggling. They did what they knew. They used their skills and talents to make their ends meet, and like teamed up. We were like, they were very good friends, or at least became good friends as well. Like you can read subtext into that if you want to, like whatever. But regardless, at the end of the day, I think like they felt the pressures of trying to survive and did what they, again, used their know-how, MacGyvered what they could from it, and like knew the system, right? They're like, oh, we can charge whatever it was, like gold, silver pieces, company script, whatever they said when they began, you know, basically being at the market in the fort and selling the cakes, right? And again, like on the side, yeah, they're stealing the milk because that's what they need to do to uplift themselves. So I'm looking at a fairly okay one, but with that, what do you guys think?
I might have a stronger case for you
Okay.
for that. Because yes, it's easier to say that like that there are actual personal antagonists here, but what really brings them down is that it's almost, I'm going to give a metaphor here. There's an artisanal bakery in Portland that can't make enemies. They keep robbing banks, but they had that one last heist fails, and this is the need to have that one last heist, even though they've committed, because I do think this has kind of a mild anti-capitalist message in it.
Oh, sorry.
And
If you
it,
didn't mention that earlier, I agree.
And it is about how much do you need to accumulate to be happy? And even though they probably could have ran after they had suspicions they were going to get caught, there was never enough they could have gotten to satisfy that ideal of wealth in America. And because I think they're talking about, we're going to go down and open up a bed and breakfast,
hotel bakery, essentially,
hotel
San
bakery,
Fran, or I think they said,
a bed and breakfast, which is exactly what it was.
Right.
But we're not going to have enough to compete with this, and you don't know, they could have had enough. They made a lot of money, especially at that time, selling their things. It's that they would never have had enough, because that image of success versus the reality, and unfortunately they had to take an illegal path to get there, but there was never, they would have gone until they got caught.
And you guys know me, I always want to give the concrete version of the antagonist if I possibly can.
Sure.
And clearly, Chief Factor, played by Toby Jones in this movie, is a figure that can be seen as the antagonist.
A representative of as such, yeah.
And I think that he does a really good job of playing that character who you're not sure how far he's willing to go until kind of the end of the movie.
Or you don't even actually know at the end of the movie how far
well,
he
that's
went.
true. But he always feels like this kind of villain character, and Toby Jones is very good at playing that type of character. You've all seen him.
Yeah, whether unfortunate or not,
you've likely seen him before.
Into it, yeah.
And he's likely been a villain because he's so good at playing this, just kind of creeping on the edges of your tingle, your villain tingle factor, whatever. So I think he does a really good job, but everything you guys said is absolutely valid as well. I'm going to give antagonists a fairly strong one. I think that they feel antagonized throughout the whole thing, and for good reason. So
yeah, I think that's all fair, and I agree. So Steve-O, why don't you continue on with protagonists?
Absolutely. So I think it's dual. I think it's a dual role.
I think it's obvious.
It's Cookie, played by John Magaro, and King Lu, played by Orion Lee. They are I guess Cookie is the main character that you're following throughout, but
it's like a 60-40 split kind
as
of.
much as the movie as King Lu's in, it's a really well done friendship, and I think that the friendship is the very core of this movie.
Yep.
And there's no point to this movie without that friendship there, and I think that part is really well done. You feel a sense of, for lack of a perhaps better term, or perhaps this is the best term, chemistry between the two of them, and it really works. The few words that they say, this is a movie of few words, right? But the few words that they say together are important. You feel that they're important to each other, right? It's just these small words of friendship that really cement what their relationship is throughout, and I think that's the real heart and soul of this movie, and I'm gonna give it, I can't possibly not give it a strong one for that.
Well, this is actually steeped in heavy Western tradition. You have Thelma and Louise, or you have Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid. They have that one of the great partnerships that really works, right? Yeah, it really works.
In the latter day.
Sure.
Yeah, but absolutely. But the idea of, I just want to a part I actually thought it was very heartwarming to me is when they get split up at the end. And I'm like, it is what's the not Cookie, the other what's the other guy's name? Ken. I'm like, is he just gonna up and leave? And then when they reunite and he hugs Cookie, I'm like, oh, good. You didn't. I would have actually felt like a betray of trust.
Yeah, when he says, "I thought you
friendship.
left," and he says, "I thought you left."
Yeah,
You know?
and the fact that they were so happy to see each other at the very end, I thought was a testament to that friendship they built over the course of the movie.
Yeah.
No, I mean, yeah, I know much better. Like you guys are right. Like, I mean, it's that relationship is the heart and soul of this film, and without it, it won't work. It doesn't work, and I think it, in fact, does. And you're right. Like they played off each other quite well. I bought into their friendship. I bought into their personalities and who they were and how they worked together to do what they were doing. So yeah, I think they both actors did a great job embracing that sort of playing those characters, and it pulled itself along.
Actually, Urban Cowboy is another really good.
Midnight Cowboy.
Midnight Cowboy was actually they have the Rizzo and relationship.
But yeah, it was very organic, believable, and that friendship, of course, like I said, as we all said, carries it along. So, agree, Steve-O, pretty strong one on that front. It without it, it just doesn't work. It doesn't hold up, but it does. So, all right, let's move along to secondary, and that will be you, E. This one's a little.
All right. Part of me wants to give it a 1 because of the world they built. There's a lot of nice small characters in this. The dumb guy with the baby, the smarmy Irish guy that he punches. Like all of these characters, they built a good world but it's not about anyone but the two main characters here.
That's the crux.
So this is almost falls into territory of short stories we've done in our lit reviews. That I don't know if there's enough there to warrant a full 1, so I might have to give it almost, as you like to say, a default 0 on this.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna piggyback on that. So while I agree with you, like I don't even want to say on the surface, like yes, a lot of nice little characters are sprinkled, I guess, throughout the film to round out the believability of the scenario. I just think they're not in it enough, and the characters you mentioned, like, Toby, whatever his name is, Steve, like he's basically the antagonist, right? So like he can't count as a secondary. Maybe it's like it was again his small little staff of hunters that comes there at the end. But for the most part, like the random trappers and stuff, like they're all there, and yes, they fill out the world. But I don't think it's not the focus of the film, anyways, right? So and then B on top of that is just like they don't have enough screen time. Again, not a fault of the film because that's not what it's trying to do, that's not what it's focusing on. So yeah, I'm going to quote you quoting me, I suppose. Like, it's sort of a default 0, not because it's bad or badly handled or badly executed or anything. Just it's not the point of the film. So it's.
I also have one last point to make on that, is that I felt that any characters in here that rose above just set dressing could have been swapped out with any of the other characters. There's no like individual identities that elevate them above.
Yeah, I agree with that. So what do you think, Steve?
Excuse me. I was trying to give this a 1. In my mind, I was like,
right.
But the thing is, there are no supporting characters that rise anywhere near or beyond a one-dimensional character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's the most damning thing, right? Like it's nobody actually has any kind of
you're right, exactly,
arc at all, like regardless of whether it's like a little tiny arc or a grander character arc, other than the main characters and the antagonists. Like
sure, I mean, and that might just real quickly, that might be by design, but that also means like
right,
yeah,
that means that it's hard to give any of these characters credit. They're very secondary to anything that happens in this movie, or even tertiary. And I have to agree. I think I'm going to give supporting a 0 on this. Though I came in wanting to give it a 1, I don't think that I can, in good conscience, do that.
Yeah, again, not a fault of the film, just by nature of that, by dirt of that, like that's where we lie. So I thought one of you, real quickly, my final thought is one of you might argue for giving the cow a 1 or something like that. Like, as
I
a
thought
secondary
about
character.
arguing for the cow, but the cow also
I thought you were gonna do it, but it
the
only
cow's
serves
on the
one
same
purpose.
level. It only has a one-dimensional
It's
character.
one-dimensional,
you know?
yeah. Right. Exactly. So maybe it's more evidence to, in fact, again, give it maybe a softer 0, but just again, at the end of the day, that's where we lie.
Actually, they put a lot of effort into casting that cow, though.
Did they?
Did they?
Well, they looked through a bunch of and this one had big eyes.
It
so
was
they thought
very
much more
photogenic, I
sympathetic.
suppose.
Yes.
Cow?
Yeah,
Sure.
It's a very photogenic cow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a
It's
great
great.
cow. It's a good cow. But anyway, the 0s on that one. I'll move along to dialogue. So I think Steve-O or one of you mentioned earlier in plot that, like, yes, it's sparse. It's not even like, how should I say, like, it's very believable, organic, and I feel as if I might overuse that term often enough on when we're discussing this stuff, but I don't know what else to describe it as because it does build a relationship. You're right, like the few words that are spoken between them say so much more than what actually is said.
Mhm.
And even like when they're exchanging, like, you know, when they have interactions with when they go to the fort or whatever, like the bar fight thing, like one of you mentioned, right? It's like all that stuff works well enough. It might be a softer one, but I don't think I can, in all good faith, give it a straight up 0 either, because again, it's about their relationships. It's about them as people, as friends, and that is the tentpole of the major like thrust of this film. So for those reasons, I think I'm looking at it's solid enough 1 anyway. So good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm nowhere near a 0 on this question. I think that it's pretty strong dialogue throughout. When it happens, yes, it's a lot of silence in this movie and a lot of like. I've been saying this since I've seen it. A lot of ponderous moments, but when they do speak, it's for a reason and it's well done. And never for a moment is it anywhere approaching cringeworthy. Never for a moment is it ever approaching like this feels weird or like
Kilter or something.
stilted or anything like that. So I think that dialogue is a pretty strong one for me.
I think in general we're kinder on dialogue than we're to any other category in our system, because generally it's like you don't screw it up, we give you a 1.
Then it works.
Yeah.
And this is the closest I approach to giving a low 0 or a
Very soft
like
one.
soft 1. But again, because they didn't screw up at any point. It might have been over long. It might have been, and good, yeah. I imagine there's a lot of silence in the old 1820 Oregon, but you know, I'm going to give it a 1 on this. But it's perhaps the best argument I've thought to give it a 0 on the other side of that coin.
No, I feel you. I get what you mean. I'll leave off this question with this: is that to your point, Steve? Like, let's say when they were doing ponderous moments and not speaking, that in itself kind of is a type of dialogue in which there's also precedent that we mentioned in other films that did that. So
Dialogue equals not dialogue. It's
like sometimes all I'm saying is like they exchange a look with each other.
Yeah.
Now, granted, not say anything, but it that they're speaking to each other in a way. So that's all. So, yeah, I think it's 1s on that. You were like, I almost wrote question mark on this one. Like, wasn't sure, but I think as we talked out, end of the day, a 1 is fine. And in that sense, let's go on to style, and that will be you, Steven.
Yeah, so I am a big fan of the style of this movie. I'm not sure what you guys are going to say, but I think that the cinematography is bordering on brilliant. Like it's just everything
It's good.
looks good.
Very
like
good. I wouldn't say brilliant, but I'm mostly with you.
The whole I feel like every shot is intentional in this film and
Sure.
makes its point. I think that there is this on purpose or purposeful sense of stillness and quietude that is happening throughout the movie, that is, whether you like it or not, whether you like that factor or not, really, really well done. And kind of. I don't think I've seen any of Kelly Reichardt's other movies,
I have not either. Yeah.
but I know that she's known for this type of
Okay.
this style. It's very quiet, like slow paced style.
Reflective.
And
movie.
I feel like this is somebody who's kind of a master of that, doing it in this movie. Now, that doesn't mean that you need to like that type of movie, but if you do, I think you can really appreciate what's happening in this. I think it's every moment of silence is for her, and if you're if you're into that type of thing, saying something. And I think that it's there's no wasted shots here, there's no wasted moments here, and I have to give it full credit for that, so I'm going to give it a 1. Now maybe you disagree with me, Ian, based on your facial pick.
I took off a point in narrative for wasted shots because I definitely think this might have done better shorter, but nonetheless, I don't know the names of anything, so correct me if I'm wrong here. Aspect ratio. They do a block shot on this. I don't know the names of things, so I apologize, but basically they have the black bars on the side, so it's cut down.
The aspect ratio is not standard for sure.
But what's great about it is that when nights, which it gives claustrophobic views during the day, and they're out in the wilderness, so adding the social claustrophobia feeling of that aspect ratio works. But at night, it feels widescreen because the shadows blend into the
it meshes
the
black bars. Yeah.
And I really appreciate that. Also, soundtrack. I really noticed the soundtrack at the opening of this movie, and then it faded from my mind because I think I got used to it, but it really set the tone, I feel, for what they were trying to build with this film. But overall, yeah, I think that stylistically it was different. It was a bold choice. I think this is why one of these critics love, because they see so many movies and like, someone's attempting something artistic with it. I love it. But I am a critic in quotes of a film, and I do appreciate when someone tries to do it. It reminded me, I mentioned a bit like Lighthouse attempted to work with the non-standard frames.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, so I mostly agree. I'm gonna probably give style 1. The only thing I will say, like, I don't know if it's a nitpick, but like the soundtrack I thought was like fine, but then like maybe once or twice, 2 or 3 times, we'll say, it didn't quite fit. Like the music that was playing, I was like, this is a little like it's not quite like the juxtaposition there didn't quite work for me. But that's a very minor complaint. For the most part, though, I thought the shots are great. There are some what I did notice the most is that, like, for example, when Cookie's in his tent and like it's like viewed via that, so like it's just a very narrow slit that he's seeing what's happening outside. Same thing when he moves in, when they had the little like the ramshackle house, like, and they're going to go, like they're escaping through the woods. Like that's what I did notice the most. And yeah, it was very beautifully shot. It's all in nature, of course. Like it's just in the woods of Oregon and what have you. So like for the most part, it 80-90% worked. I just mentioned the minor nitpicks that I did have, but that in no way means I'm not giving it a 1. So. And
also the period design was fantastic.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like the fort looked great. Like everyone's stepping in mud and shit. Like yeah, it all worked for very much so. Versus any like little minor like things where it doesn't really matter.
So the world is populated by Tom Waits from Buster Scruggs.
Yeah.
Yeah, very nice.
I missed Buster Scruggs. I gotta watch that again.
We never actually did we review it on air? I don't know. We'll do it later if not. But
that was great.
Buster Scruggs is a great film. You should check that out. So anyway, let's bring it on home. E, you recommend First Cow?
I enjoyed it. I'm never going to see it again, and there are few people I could actually, I think, recommend this to, because you have to be. I actually think you have to be a fan of film to enjoy this. It's very deliberate. It's very slow paced. It's appreciating art. It's going there and being like, I get why this brushstroke was done here, and it's not just like it's not a popcorn film. It's not. I think that it would turn off a lot of people, and you can see this in how critics loved it and audiences are like very
like
split on
whatever.
It was
Yeah.
wild. Yeah, it was wildly like if you look at Rotten Tomatoes, I think it's like 95% critics, like 60% audience or something like that.
Yeah.
I think 50 is for audience, but it's and that's it. That's the danger. It's not something I would give a lot of caveats before I told someone to go see this. So
Yeah, I agree.
You give it a 0?
Yeah, what do you think, Steve-O? Because I'm gonna. It depends like what you say. I'm debating.
So I am going to probably give this a 1 for recommend. I think that you're, for the most part, right, Ian. This is a movie. Well, let me say this. This is a movie that most people wouldn't watch if, like, given the choice, I guess. But what I would say is it's a movie that's worth watching at least once. I'm not sure if I'll watch it again. I find myself thinking about it. Like, I watched it yesterday, and I've found myself throughout today thinking about it, though.
Sure.
And just by dint of that, I think that it's worth a watch, even if you don't, like, initially find yourself loving it. I think it's something that, like, you kind of are going to think about. It's something that sticks in your subconscious, I guess, or at least for me, I found that. So in terms of that, I would say, like, check it out.
to rebut that point, though, is that another A24 film, The Witch, which is similarly very slow paced. I love The Witch. I think that the ending is fantastic. That has a stronger payoff in a lot of ways than, and I think that it also has more mass appeal. And I know a lot of people who couldn't even finish The Witch.
I did not. At least I went back to finish it, but the first time I did not finish The Witch. So
And I think that this would suffer the same fate. People going in to look, if they couldn't get into The Witch, they certainly are going to struggle through First Cow. But that's just my opinion. It could be wrong, could be beloved, but
No, I mean, I think you're, for the most part, you're right. I go back and forth on this question, recommend, because, like, well, will I recommend it? Sure, I'll recommend a lot of things to a lot of people that won't like it. Like, should I? Will I recommend it or should I recommend it? Right? Like, and I kind of go back and forth on that in terms of how I answer it for a lot of movies. Depending on where I'm at that point and, like, what I thought about the movie and a lot of different reasons. In terms of this one, I think that, you know what, honestly, I think you're kind of right. I'm not sure that I would recommend this movie to a lot of people.
Ooh, changing up.
I would recommend this movie to all of my, and perhaps here's the other thing. Like, I feel like I have accumulated more friends who are, like, film buffs than probably most people.
Sure.
So, like, yeah,
because
I'm
that's
like,
all
oh,
we
yeah,
talk about
go
It's
with
the
people.
Rotten Tomatoes
Yeah.
divide again.
Listen,
like,
hey, Morgan, our friend who's on it once a year, like, and a fucking director and, like, all this shit, like,
a huge film.
go
buff.
watch this movie. I know he's gonna fucking love this movie.
Yeah.
Like, but would I recommend it to, like, Joe Schmo off the
Hey,
street?
or your
Oh,
brother or something like that.
Yeah. So maybe I'll change it a little bit. Maybe I will give it a 0. I think that you've kind of convinced me of that, Ian. I think you're right. Like, there are more people that I wouldn't recommend this to than those that I would recommend it to. I think the people that I would recommend it to will absolutely love it, and perhaps even more than me, get into it because they are, like, really into film, and, like, this film is about film. This film is about, like, movie making.
It's a film for
script
filmmakers.
writing.
yeah.
Yeah,
By
exactly.
filmmakers.
There's so much in it that's like, oh, if you make movies, you're gonna fucking love this shit. But you're right. It is perhaps something that isn't going to have that wide appeal. So maybe I think I'll change mine to a 0.
Switching. Yeah, I got you. I mean, I largely agree. Like, I wrote down 0 for myself, and I'm like on top of everything you guys said, which I almost 90% agree with and back up. So I'm trying to view it in this sense, like this is an an A24 film, and since that bar is so high in general, it's like to me a middle of the road A24 film. Like, now is it bad? No, of course not. But again, it's more niche than even some of their other stuff would be. So like, yeah, while it's worth a watch, yes, I'll say that. But again, I'm not going to go watch it again in the sense that I watched Midsummer multiple times. I watched Lighthouse multiple times. Like, again, other things in their output. So like, it's fine, but just because of that, I'm going to give it a softer 0. I'm not quite going to recommend it, even though, as we all said, like, it's not a bad film by any means. It's just that I'm sort of like, maybe taking a cue for Aziz sometimes said, like, I have to remove myself from that angle and look at it, more critically from a critical eye, and compare against the rest of the output that this studio has done. So
yeah, I will say that I love that we probably wouldn't have even given this a second thought, this film,
if it weren't A24,
unless it was A24. And I love that A24 is kind of like expanding our film horizons.
Certainly,
in terms of like,
I just enjoy that there's a publisher out there who has good taste and finds good films and like gives a platform to them.
and gives them money and like makes those films, right? Like, we don't have to fucking absolutely love all of them, but like I can say this, like,
you can certainly respect them for doing that. Yeah.
nearly every A24 film that I've seen has had an authorship, an authorship almost.
Yes.
That is like
exactly.
really, really different than a lot of other stuff that has come before it. They don't put out the same stuff, but they put out things that are interesting every time.
Yeah, exactly.
Whether or not you absolutely love First Cow or find it boring, you can't say it's like the same as everything else that's coming out, right? Like, and the same goes for all of their other movies except for Slice, which was terrible. But
all right, take it easy. But no, I
have to rail against it at least once.
That's fine. No, like, again, like, I mostly agree. Like, just to cap off, yeah, not everything is going to be like have a broad appeal to the LCD, if you will, and that doesn't have to either. But even, again, the way I viewed it, even within their orb of work, it's good, it's fine, it's just not top notch to me. But sure, I can certainly appreciate and respect them for being a studio who does look, who specifically does work with filmmakers who are making these kinds of things, and that's perfectly fine, and I support that pretty hugely. So yeah, so like a nice flip on there. So I'll break it down for you guys. Let's see what we've got. Well, we've all given it 7s, basically for the same reasons. We gave 2 to plot, and we decided the secondary characters just, again, by nature and or design didn't quite work, and we decided at the very end there, just to not quite recommend it for everything we just said, even though it's not a bad film. It is different and unique enough, but versus the rest of, again, the field, if you will, the A24 output, it lies about middle of the road. So that means it's a 7 overall. That's still pretty strong and still fine film.
Yeah, we're halfway between the critics and the audience.
yeah. We lie somewhere between them. We took the aspects of all of those. So yeah, I think that would do it. And unless you guys have any final thoughts on First Cow? Nope. All right. Well, we have been the Lost Signals. I've been Scott Thurlow. I'm going to go steal milk from my own neighbor's cow right now. I've been here with Stephen Amosi.
Milk's gone bad.
and Jonathan Ian Manzer.
And we're the film critics.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for joining us. Good night. We'll see you next time.
Editing and engineering by Christopher Morgan. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates. Or mods?